Let's bridge the gap between Nostradamus's cryptic 16th century visions and our modern understanding of global catastrophe. When we examine his architecture of apocalypse, we find more than just vague warnings. We discover specific references to celestial impacts and the enigmatic false dust that could blanket our world. By mapping these ancient prophecies against today's high-tech infrared imaging and orbital monitoring, we uncover a chillingly synchronized timeline of descent. It's where timeless mysticism meets a terrifyingly modern reality.
We're facing a systematic breakdown of the Earth's biosphere, a grim sequence that maps the collapse of our world. It starts with the catalyst, where solar heat and fire from the sky initiate the damage. This evolves into the veil, choking the planet with pestilent dust. From there, universal famine takes hold during the starvation, eventually driving us into the abyss. At this stage, physical survival gives way to extreme desperation and the total breakdown of human morality.
Century 5, Quatrain 90, offers a chilling precursor to our current orbital crisis. The text warns of a plague through false dust, which analysts identify as carbon debris trailing from this incoming cometary bolide. With our biosphere integrity now officially compromised, these ancient warnings align perfectly with our modern telemetry. We aren't just observing a celestial event, we are witnessing the arrival of a critical, extinction-level threat that was documented nearly 500 years ago.
The mechanics of false dust reveal a devastating chain reaction triggered by high-altitude impacts. Sun-blocking particulate ash creates an atmospheric shield, plunging the region into a lethal impact winter. For 9 months, the sun will vanish from the Chersonese, completely shattering the Mediterranean's agricultural cycle. This leads to more than just famine. We're facing a secondary contagion where mass malnutrition inevitably gives way to plague. It's a documented historical sequence that leaves our global biosphere integrity fundamentally compromised.
We've reached a critical threshold where the biosphere's integrity is officially compromised. As we monitor these boiling seas around Euboea, the reality is as grim as the ancient prophecies suggested. Marine life is literally being cooked in the water. Between the superheating caused by this solar megaflare and the localized devastation of a comet thermal flash, we're witnessing a poetic yet horrifying magnification of global warming. It's no longer just a trend, it's an immediate, catastrophic collapse. We've reached a critical threshold with the Samarabrin enigma. While the core prophecy warns of a pestiferous wave raining down over the Arctic, modern data provides a startling interpretation. The distance mentioned, 100 leagues, converts precisely to 300 miles, the exact altitude of low Earth orbit. This suggests Samarabrin is actually a rogue orbital satellite or space station, weaponized with biological agents and operating entirely outside the reach of international law or political oversight.
To truly diagnose the pestilent wave, we must weigh 3 distinct possibilities. First, the cosmic threat, a comet strike triggering massive carbon dust and tidal waves, which aligns perfectly with historical motifs of fire from the sky. Then there's the climatic perspective, where a solar megaflare causes boiling seas and catastrophic crop failures. Finally, we can't ignore the militaristic angle, space-based bioweapons and radioactive fallout. This path is uniquely supported by the specific orbital terminology of Samarabrin.
Our focus shifts to the Aegean, where the threat level has reached a critical peak. Unlike many vague prophecies, Nostradamus provided a chillingly precise blueprint of destruction. We're looking at a localized obliteration of the cradle of Western civilization, with the epicenter pulsing through the Cyclades. From Sparta up to the Gallipoli Peninsula, this celestial event is set to overwhelm the entire region long before any relief fleets from Genoa could possibly arrive. It's a total compromise of biosphere integrity.
What begins as isolated regional disasters, pestilence in the Arctic, or dust clouds over Greece, is rapidly metastasizing into a total agricultural collapse. We are witnessing the realization of a universal famine,
where our global biosphere's interconnectedness ensures that no nation remains untouched. The data from Orbital Watch is clear. Our planetary integrity is now officially compromised. As the prophecy warned, these localized struggles have merged into an inescapable global catastrophe, threatening the very foundations of human survival. When exploring desperation beyond humanity, we're confronting a level of suffering that fundamentally rewires our nature. This prophecy paints a haunting picture of a famine so relentless it fractures our most sacred societal taboos. It suggests that under the crushing weight of absolute starvation, even the strongest maternal instincts are severed. We aren't just discussing a food shortage, we're witnessing a total collapse where the primal drive for survival overrides the very core of who we are.
Nostradamus presents a haunting vision in his 75th quatrain, where the soaring price of wheat triggers a descent into total chaos. He uses the clinical term anthropophage, the man-eater, not for mere shock value, but as a grave apocalyptic warning. It's a stark reminder that extreme ecological collapse and economic devastation don't just hit our wallets, they can destroy the very fabric of societal morality, driving humanity toward a terrifying and desperate loss of our shared humanity. As the cost of basic sustenance skyrockets, societal order begins its inevitable descent. This intersection represents a chilling threshold, the anthrophagy point. It's the moment where hyperinflation strips away our humanity, triggering a total reversion to primal, violent survival instincts. Nostradamus warns us that morality isn't an inherent human trait, but rather a fragile luxury of the well-fed. When the stomach is empty, civilization's rules vanish, replaced by the desperate and brutal economics of survival. Why do these specific 16th century prophecies endure today? It's because Nostradamus' grim sequence of impact, environmental ruin, and social collapse acts as a prophetic mirror to our own scientific anxieties. His poetic nightmares align flawlessly with contemporary threat assessments, from climate tipping points to nuclear winter and supply chain fragility. What once seemed like ancient mysticism now reflects our modern understanding of global catastrophe, proving that our fears haven't changed, only the language we use to describe them. Summarizing the Doomsday Dossier, we face a multi-vector attack, ranging from solar flares to cometary dust. However, the immediate impact isn't the true disaster. Rather, it's the agonizing, inescapable destruction of our global food supply. This collapse of the agricultural cycle triggers a chain reaction, where ecological ruin leads directly to moral decay. Ultimately, we aren't just fighting for survival. We're witnessing a desperate reversion to our most primal extremes, as the world we know inevitably unravels. For centuries, the cryptic warnings of Nostradamus have haunted our collective imagination, but perhaps none are as chilling as his vision of famine within plague. By deconstructing Century 2, Quatrain 6, we bridge the gap between ancient astrological prophecy and the cold, classified reality of the atomic age. It's an exploration into the hermeneutics of nuclear trauma, how the arcane wisdom of the past attempts to reconcile the ultimate technological nightmares of our modern world.
Century 2, Quatrain 6 remains one of Nostradamus's most haunting enigmas. It warns of two scourges, unlike any seen before, striking deep within two cities. The visceral imagery of famine, plague, and people driven out by steel paints a chilling portrait of unprecedented devastation, haunting clarity across the centuries.
August 1945 fundamentally altered history, marking an abrupt transition from conventional warfare to an era of unprecedented power. On August 6th, Little Boy struck Hiroshima, claiming 80,000 lives and vaporizing 70% of the city. 3 days later, Fat Man devastated Nagasaki, causing 40,000 more immediate casualties. These weren't just tactical strikes, they represented a profound paradigm shift, thrusting the world into a new reality defined by destruction the likes of which had never been seen.
The prophecy, within two cities near the gates,
takes on a chilling significance when applied to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These weren't just urban centers, they were strategic coastal hubs. Hiroshima served as a vital military hub, while Nagasaki was the historic gateway for international trade. By retroactively mapping the term gates to these specific harbor cities, interpreters connect ancient text to the devastating reality of 1945, linking prophecy with the onset of the atomic age. For centuries, the devastation of war was tethered to human stamina and rudimentary black powder. While 16th century conflicts were brutal, they remained fundamentally localized. This changed with the atomic age, where subatomic vaporization turned ancient hyperbolic descriptions of disaster into a terrifying physical reality. As the phrase "Ankh na perut antel" suggests, humanity finally encountered a scourge the like of which was never seen, shifting our capacity for destruction from the city walls to the very atoms themselves.
Beyond the initial blast lay an invisible plague, acute radiation syndrome. This was a horrific mystery of unknown origin, characterized by a systematic physical breakdown. On the surface, survivors suffered from agonizing skin lesions and hair loss, but internally, the damage was catastrophic: circulatory failure and total bone marrow destruction. Because radiation was so poorly understood, this new plague sparked a terrifying fear of contagion, leaving the Hibakusha to face profound social isolation alongside their immense physical agony. Total war triggers a systemic collapse that goes far beyond the battlefield. It starts with external pressures like naval blockades, followed by the literal vaporization of infrastructure. As roads and rails are destroyed, internal supply lines vanish, leading to a catastrophic urban famine. This intersection of radiation sickness and starvation creates a state of femme dedans peste, famine within plague. It defines the biological horror of late 1945, where survivors were left to starve amidst radioactive rubble.
To understand the architecture of an enduring myth, we must examine how narratives bridge the gap between ancient mysticism and modern trauma. Century 2, Quatrain 6 is a masterpiece of cultural myth-making, fusing Renaissance astrology with 20th century existential dread. Ultimately, this quatrain survives not because Nostradamus actually foresaw the atomic bomb, but because humanity desperately needed a narrative framework to help us process the terrifying dawn of nuclear annihilation and the weight of our own potential end.
Imagine a film so eerily accurate it was locked away for decades. In 1974, a Japanese disaster epic hit screens, portraying a scenario that seemed like pure fiction. Yet, its narrative precisely mirrored the tragic 2011 Fukushima Daiichi nuclear crisis. Because its predictions hit uncomfortably close to home, the film was suppressed and labeled restricted. Let's examine how this forgotten masterpiece foresaw a real-world catastrophe nearly 40 years before the world ever saw it coming.
Back in 1974, the Toho film Nostradamus no Dai-yogen delivered a chillingly precise prophecy. In the movie, Dr. Ryogen Nishiyama warned that a massive earthquake would trigger catastrophic meltdowns and explosions at the Fukushima Daiichi plant. Fast forward nearly 37 years to March 2011, and that cinematic theory became a devastating historical reality. The alignment between this hyper-specific fictional warning and the actual disaster remains a haunting example of fiction anticipating truth with terrifying accuracy.
It all began in 1555 with Michel de Nostradamus' cryptic King of Terror prophecy. For centuries, these verses remained vague curiosities until 1973, when journalist Ben Goto fused the ancient text with modern Japanese anxieties regarding nuclear war. His book became a massive blockbuster, triggering a nationwide panic. Sensing a hit, Toho Studios quickly capitalized on this Nostradamus fever, greenlighting a big-budget disaster epic in 1974 to bring these apocalyptic visions to life on the big screen.
At the heart of this 1974 disaster epic is Dr. Nishiyama, a protagonist desperately using Nostradamus' prophecies to warn indifferent leaders of a coming catastrophe.
We see this doom unfold through grotesque ecological mutations, like giant leeches spawned from toxic mining runoff. From there, the world plunges into total societal collapse, triggered by ozone-depleting jets and global fires. It all reaches a horrific climax with a total nuclear holocaust, leaving only mutated survivors to brawl among the radioactive ruins of civilization.
In May 1974, life tragically imitated art on the Toho lot. While filming a sequence depicting the Earth's ozone layer igniting, a massive fire broke out that completely leveled Studio 7. The damage was devastating. Beyond the building, the blaze claimed irreplaceable pieces of cinematic history. Countless iconic props and monster suits were incinerated, including the original Mogera suit from 1957's The Mysterians. It remains a somber and permanent loss for the world of tokusatsu.
While the film was a massive commercial hit, grossing over 883 million yen, its success was overshadowed by a fierce backlash from the Hibakusha. These atomic bomb survivors were deeply offended by the film's depiction of radiation victims as cannibalistic mutants and grotesque monsters. They argued that these portrayals didn't just dehumanize real victims, but actively worsened the severe societal discrimination they already faced in Japan, turning their tragic reality into a sensationalized horror show.
By late 1974, intense regulatory pressure forced Toho to issue a public apology and cut over 100 seconds of controversial footage. While an edited version aired on television in 1980, that proved to be the film's final legitimate appearance in Japan. When protests killed planned home video releases in 1986, Toho enacted a strict self-imposed ban. Today, the master prints remain locked away, and the film survives only through time-coded bootlegs traded on the black market.
It's uncanny how closely art can mirror life. Back in 1974, a cinematic vision eerily predicted the exact tragedy that would strike Japan in 2011. Both the film and historical reality targeted the Fukushima Daiichi plant, depicting massive earthquakes and catastrophic core meltdowns. Most hauntingly, the fictional warnings of Dr. Nishiyama paralleled the real-world safety alerts that were systematically ignored by regulators. This wasn't just a coincidence. It's a sobering reminder of the cost of disregarding scientific foresight.
For decades, Prophecies of Nostradamus was dismissed as campy 1970s exploitation cinema, purely for cult enthusiasts. However, the 2011 disaster changed everything. Its eerie accuracy regarding the risks of nuclear power in a seismic zone transformed the film from an insensitive artifact into a grim, validated warning. What was once seen as kitsch suddenly fueled a massive anti-nuclear movement, proving that these ignored prophecies weren't just science fiction, they were a reflection of a nation's neglected environmental reality.
We've reached a point where this film is simply too volatile for the foreseeable future. While Toho initially withheld it to respect victims of the past, the 2011 Fukushima disaster acted as the final seal on its fate. Because the movie's predictions were so terrifyingly accurate, it carries a level of political radioactivity that makes distribution impossible today. Given the ongoing national trauma, historians agree that a home video release remains locked away indefinitely. Prophecies of Nostradamus exists as a chilling cultural anomaly, hopelessly caught between the two tragic bookends of modern Japanese history. While its graphic imagery deeply offended survivors of the 1945 atomic bombings, those same scenes would later serve as a haunting premonition of the 2011 Fukushima disaster. Today, the film remains permanently banned, a work of fiction locked away because of its own dark paradox, where imagined horrors and real-world tragedies collide with devastating, undeniable precision.
Centuries ago, Nostradamus warned of a time when the sea would burn as the great star's ire cast flames across the water. Today, those cryptic lines align unsettlingly well with our 2026 solar maximum predictions. We are anticipating massive X-class flares and coronal mass ejections that could trigger a significant 4-degree spike in ocean surface temperatures. It's a chilling intersection where ancient prophecy meets modern astrophysics, suggesting the boiling sea is a looming solar cataclysm.
Nostradamus presents a haunting vision of environmental collapse in his 2nd century. He describes solar heat so intense it boils the sea, leaving fish half-cooked for desperate inhabitants to harvest. This isn't just a bizarre observation, it's a warning of total systemic failure. When historical trade hubs like Rhodes and Genoa can no longer provide basic sustenance, we see a world pushed past its breaking point, where the environment that once sustained us becomes our undoing.
Focusing on our geographic anchor, Negroponte stands as the epicenter of a terrifying, hyper-localized disaster where the Aegean Sea was literally flash-heated. It's a harrowing scene. Starving inhabitants were forced to survive on flash-boiled marine life. This catastrophe was deepened by a total breakdown in logistics. Critical supply chains from both Genoa and Rhodes failed, leaving the region completely isolated. Without naval relief, what began as a localized event became a desperate, lonely struggle for survival.
What truly possesses the power to boil an entire ocean? While many equate solar heat with a nuclear blast, analyst R.W. Welch dismisses this theory. After all, starving survivors wouldn't be reaching for radioactive fish. Instead, we must look toward 3 far more massive mechanisms identified by astrophysicists to match the 1555 prophecy. Whether it's a devastating kinetic impact, a sudden radiological surge, or runaway climatic shifts, these are the planetary scale forces capable of such cataclysmic destruction.
Imagine a comet nucleus hurtling through the atmosphere and slamming directly into the Aegean Sea. The scale of this event is staggering, releasing kinetic energy equivalent to thousands of nuclear bombs and causing the surrounding sea to flash boil instantly. However, the true devastation lies in the aftermath, massive tidal waves followed by a thick blanket of carbon dust. This false dust would have choked the sky, ruining crops and triggering a catastrophic regional famine that reshaped ancient history.
Now let's look at scenario 2, the galactic superwave. Based on Dr. Paul Laviolette's research, this theory involves a massive outburst of cosmic rays erupting from the center of our galaxy. This energy wave pushes cosmic dust into our solar system, essentially agitating the sun into a state of hyperactivity. We'd face constant solar flares and scorching heat, a terrifyingly literal fulfillment of Nostradamus' prophecy of chaleur solaire. It's a sobering look at how celestial events could dictate our future.
Imagine a sky dominated by 2 suns, a phenomenon predicted centuries ago by Nostradamus. This isn't just a celestial wonder, but a superwave arriving as a brilliant blue-white star that rivals our own sun. Its arrival signals more than a cosmic anomaly. It forces the immediate evacuation of Rome, driving the great pontiff from his territory. As the Vatican clears, we witness the sudden collapse of central religious authority in the wake of this catastrophic miracle.
Centuries ago, prophecies foretold a time when Venus would be covered by the sun. We've now pinpointed that exact moment, New Year's Day 2026. This rare occultation is the definitive celestial trigger researchers have been tracking. This alignment serves as a critical chronological marker, acting as the catalyst for a series of significant solar and terrestrial anomalies. As we ring in 2026, this cosmic event marks the beginning of a profound and potentially volatile new chapter for our entire planet.
Modern climate chaos brings us to a point where ancient prophecies take on a chillingly literal meaning. Centuries ago, we were warned of very great dryness and rivers overflowing with blood. Today, that imagery manifests as toxic red tides triggered by ocean acidification and record-breaking temperatures. As our oceans warm, marine life is quite literally being choked out, transforming the poetic warnings of the past into the devastating ecological reality we are witnessing right now. As we approach the 2026 convergence, two chilling prophecies align with modern technological threats. The Great Swarm of Bees, once a cryptic warning, now mirrors the rise of autonomous drone warfare and sudden maneuvers from Eastern powers. Meanwhile, the Thunderbolt prophecy describes a world leader struck down, a scenario that today suggests the use of sophisticated directed energy weapons. Together, these events point toward a volatile future where ancient warnings meet our most advanced high-tech military capabilities. When we bridge ancient prophecy with mathematical precision, a startling timeline for institutional collapse emerges. St. Malachi's 12th century text identified 112 popes, concluding with Peter the Roman during the final fall of Rome. By treating 1585 as a chronological midpoint and adding exactly 442 years, we land squarely on 2027. This convergence gains weight when paired with Nostradamus' 2026 solar disaster, suggesting the very pillars of our global order are fast approaching a terminal, world-altering reset.
Let's examine the underlying architecture that makes these prophecies feel so prescient. Through the mechanics of post-diction, Nostradamus utilized deliberate ambiguity and archaic terminology to create a flexible framework. When he writes of galleys or fire from the sky, the density of his language allows us to easily project modern concepts like battleships or ICBMs onto the text. This structural depth ensures ancient metaphors are seamlessly reinterpreted to fit the technological realities of any era. While we often associate Nostradamus with apocalypse, his work actually maps a cycle of profound renewal. This brings us to the 2026 promise, a pivotal moment where the shadows finally fall. Interpreters point to a hopeful mandate: the man of light will rise, signaling a major societal shift. It suggests we are moving away from terminal chaos and toward a future that prioritizes restoration, offering a brighter, more stable vision for the centuries ahead. Let's dive into the anatomy of a doomsday prophecy by dissecting one of Nostradamus' most chilling visions, the Great Mountain of Fire. This striking woodcut captures the raw terror of a burning peak plummeting toward a turbulent sea, as described in Century 1, Quatrain 69. We're performing a forensic breakdown to explore why this imagery resonates across centuries, uncovering the psychological fascination we have with the apocalypse and how these ancient warnings continue to haunt our collective imagination today.
To understand the legend of Nostradamus, we must look at the man, Michel de Nostradam. A physician deeply scarred by the bubonic plague, he channeled his trauma into his 1555 work, Les Prophéties. He didn't just write predictions, he constructed a massive verbal jigsaw puzzle. By layering Greek, Latin, and anagrams, he intentionally obscured his timeline. This cryptic method ensured his 942 quatrains would remain a compelling, unsolved riddle long after his death in 1566.
Let's dive into Century 1, Quatrain 69, which presents a startling image of a great mountain, 7 stades round. Notice how the text sets the stage following a tumultuous cycle of peace, war, famine, and flood. This mountain doesn't just fall, it rolls and plunges across vast regions, swallowing up ancient civilizations and their long-standing foundations. It's a chilling depiction of a cataclysmic event that suggests a massive upheaval, one capable of erasing the very history of these great nations.
When ancient texts describe a great mountain 7-stayed round, forensic translation allows us to visualize the true magnitude of that event. By converting this ancient unit, we find that 7 stayed equals over 4,000 feet, nearly a mile in diameter. To put that into perspective, look at how it dwarfs the Empire State Building. This isn't just poetic language, it's a precise description of a massive stony mountain hurtling through space toward Earth. Nostradamus rarely pins his predictions to specific dates. Instead, he provides a catalyst sequence.
Think of it as a roadmap where the ultimate impact is triggered by a cascading series of societal and environmental collapses. We see a progression starting from peace, crumbling into war, then resource depletion, and finally catastrophic climate flooding. This specific domino effect, the transition from human conflict to planetary disaster, serves as the final necessary precursor to a truly significant cosmic event.
When we describe something that will tumble a long way, we're highlighting a specific chaotic orbital behavior. This phrasing aligns perfectly with how Earth-crossing asteroids and fragmented comets move through space. Consider major anomalies like Eros, Apollo, or Icarus. These aren't just smooth travelers, but irregular masses on unpredictable paths. By studying these tumbling objects, including Tautitis and Phaeton, we gain a better understanding of the erratic nature and potential risks these visitors pose as they cross our orbit.
Imagine a 1-mile-wide object plunging deep into our oceans. The kinetic energy from such an impact doesn't just make a splash. It triggers catastrophic hypertsunamis that can literally erase history. We're talking about massive walls of water capable of sinking entire countries and washing away the grand foundations of ancient civilizations. In an instant, coastal monuments and centuries of progress are submerged, leaving behind a world where antiquity itself has been effectively wiped from the map.
To truly understand Nostradamus, we must look at his literary blueprint. He was a deeply religious, historically literate man, and his prophecies weren't written in a vacuum. Take Century 1, Quatrain 69. The imagery of a great mountain tumbling and sinking countries is a direct poetic adaptation of the Book of Revelation. By mirroring the biblical account of a burning mountain cast into the sea, Nostradamus was expertly weaving familiar scripture into his own apocalyptic visions.
Cosmic impacts aren't just myths, they are documented realities. Consider the 1908 Tunguska event, where a 160-foot meteor flattened 1,000 square kilometers of Siberian forest. While devastating, that's dwarfed by the 2.5-mile fragments of Shoemaker-Levy 9 that slammed into Jupiter in 1994. When you see how these objects compare to the scale of Nostradamus Mountain, the danger becomes clear. These precedents remind us that the threat from space is an astronomical reality we simply cannot ignore.
Nostradamus perceived a chilling connection between the movements of the heavens and the fate of humanity. Throughout Les Prophecies, we see a recurring pattern linking celestial phenomena directly to terrestrial ruin. In Century 2, he famously warns of a bearded star, or comet, acting as a grim omen for impending global conflict. This astronomical dread intensifies as he describes fiery stones raining from above, transforming our landscape into a sea of debris. To him, the sky wasn't just a view, it was a warning.
Imagine the terror of a 16th century observer witnessing a streak of flame tearing across the heavens. We're diving into Nostradamus' Century 1, Quatrain 46, famously known for its depiction of fire from the sky. This prophecy has sparked centuries of intense debate. Was he predicting a literal celestial impact, or something more metaphorical about the shifting tides of power? Let's begin by decoding the cryptic language and historical context behind this haunting, apocalyptic vision of the future. Michel de Nostradamus was far more than just a mystic. He was a 16th century physician and astrologer operating in an era of intense plague and political upheaval. In 1555, he published his seminal work, Les Prophecies, comprised of 942 four-line verses called quatrains, organized into blocks of 100. To evade persecution, he utilized a dense linguistic code, mixing Latin, Greek, and French, crafting an intentional ambiguity that continues to invite endless interpretation and debate today.
Let's delve into Century 1, Quatrain 46, a haunting prophecy centered on the French towns of Ach, Lectoure, and Mirande. Nostradamus foretells a great fire descending from the sky for 3 consecutive nights, a celestial event he describes as both stupendous and marvelous.
However, this display carries a dark omen, as the prophecy concludes with the chilling prediction that the Earth will tremble shortly after. It's a classic example of his cryptic style, blending astronomical wonder with sudden, looming catastrophe.
When we examine the opening line, we find a direct reference to Ach, Lectoure, and Mirande. These are real, neighboring towns in southwestern France that form what we've dubbed the geographic triangle. This specificity is crucial. While we often associate Nostradamus with broad, sweeping global prophecies, here he does the exact opposite. He narrows his focus to a highly localized impact zone, grounding this particular event in a very precise and identifiable physical landscape.
The prophecy of a great fire falling for 3 nights presents a fascinating scientific puzzle. While a standard meteor provides a brief, intense flash lasting only seconds, it simply doesn't fit this extended timeline. To explain a 3-day event, we must consider massive objects like a lingering comet coma or even a large asteroid captured in a decaying orbit. These scenarios create multiple fiery passes through our atmosphere, transforming a terrifying ancient omen into a documented astronomical phenomenon.
When we read that a very stupendous and marvelous event will occur, we have to adopt a 16th century perspective. To the Renaissance mind, celestial anomalies weren't just rocks and ice, they were divine harbingers of war, plague, or royal death. The original French roots, stupende and mirande, perfectly capture this dual nature, a staggering blend of awe and absolute terror. It is the visceral, human reaction to a blinding night sky explosion, a spectacle as beautiful as it was profoundly frightening.
Nostradamus's prediction that the Earth will tremble captures the terrifying physics of a celestial impact. When a massive bolide detonates as an atmospheric airburst, it releases a colossal kinetic payload akin to a nuclear explosion. This downward surge of energy slams into the Earth's crust, triggering violent seismic shockwaves that radiate from the impact zone. It's a chilling realization of how a single celestial event can instantly transform into devastating, widespread seismic activity beneath our very feet.
One of the most recurring symbols in Les Prophéties is the bearded star. These cosmic intruders serve as the ultimate catalysts for earthly ruin and geopolitical collapse. In Century 2, Quatrain 43 links the star's appearance to 3 great princes becoming enemies, while Quatrain 46 warns of a long spark in the heavens bringing blood, famine, and plague. To Nostradamus, these celestial omens weren't just spectacles, they were the terrifying harbingers of total global disaster.
History reminds us that fire from the sky is a terrifying documented reality. In 1908, the Tunguska event saw a meteor level 1,000 square kilometers of Siberian forest, leaving a footprint of devastation that defies imagination. Shifting to the cosmic stage, the 1994 impact of Shoemaker-Ledy 9 on Jupiter showcased even greater scale. That comet shattered into fragments, triggering atmospheric explosions larger than our entire planet, a vivid reminder of the raw power lurking in our universe.
Today's believers often view ancient prophecies through the lens of our modern existential fears. For some, the Great Fire is a striking metaphor for our current climate instability, those unprecedented heat waves and droughts threatening the planet. Others look toward geopolitical volatility, interpreting fire from the sky as literal modern warfare and the threat of nuclear conflict. As these interpretations evolve, the timeline continues to shift, with many followers now focusing on 2026 as the year these visions finally manifest.
Century I, Quatrain 46, remains a haunting masterpiece of apocalyptic poetry, bridging the gap between the ancient world and our modern reality. Whether you view these verses as a literal warning of a celestial threat or a psychological mirror for our shared societal anxieties, their resonance is undeniable. The text endures because, even today, the sky remains vast and our fear of the unknown remains absolute. It is this timeless mystery that keeps the enigma alive for us.
Let's dive into the anatomy of a prophecy by deconstructing Nostradamus' Century 2, Quatrain 75. We're examining a narrative that bridges centuries, linking the devastating 1709 famine to the unsettling prospect of a 2026 food chain collapse. This glitchy wheat stalk symbolizes the fragile intersection between historical record and future uncertainty. By dissecting these lines, we'll uncover if these words are merely ancient artifacts or urgent technical warnings for our near-term global food security. When we contemplate the ultimate fear of societal collapse, few warnings are as visceral as those of Michel de Nostradamus. Writing in 1555, the French physician envisioned a total breakdown of the food chain. He predicted that wheat prices would soar so high that desperation would drive humanity to the unthinkable, the ultimate taboo of cannibalism. It's a chilling reminder that when basic resources vanish, the very fabric of our shared morality and civilization can quickly unravel. When we process Quatrain 75 through this engine, the cryptic French reveals layers of apocalyptic imagery. That rare bird heard through a vent could be an ancient omen or modern aerial technology. This leads to a terrifying economic collapse where hyperinflation drives wheat prices to impossible heights. Ultimately, it depicts a society so fractured that people consume one another, whether through literal starvation or the metaphorical predatory consumption of the poor by the rich.
To understand why these prophecies endure, we must explore the lexicon of ambiguity. By blending astrological framing with green language, cryptic metaphors and anagrams, and intentionally omitting specific dates, a flexible foundation is established. This feeds into a mechanism of structural anomaly, where an illusion of order masks a non-linear timeline. The result is an output of limitless interpretations, transforming the verses into adaptable vessels that can be projected onto the specific anxieties of any era.
In 1709, a brutal deep freeze from the Little Ice Age shattered Europe, obliterating French crops overnight. This trigger sparked a catastrophic wheat crisis, driving grain prices so high they fulfilled the darkest prophecies of the era's quatrains. The situation became so dire that King Louis XIV was forced to sell off royal treasures just to purchase bread for his people. Tragically, these efforts weren't enough, resulting in mass starvation that pushed the peasantry to the absolute brink of survival.
Nostradamus' prophetic process was a fascinating blend of intellectual study and sensory manipulation. By synthesizing celestial alignments with deep trance states and even mild catalysts like nutmeg, he distilled his visions into cryptic four-line quatrains. Written in a muddled cocktail of French, Latin, and Greek, these verses were intentionally ambiguous. His true genius lay in this very vagueness. He crafted airy vapors of text that remained nebulous enough to let every reader's imagination fill in the blanks.
Imagine the sun beating down with such intensity that the ocean itself begins to boil. This isn't just heat, it's a visceral horror, where fish are left half-cooked in the waves, driving starving inhabitants to a state of absolute desperation. As they scavenge for survival, we witness the ultimate collapse of social order. When the biscuit, the fundamental ship's rations, finally fails, it signals a complete breakdown of maritime relief and the onset of total systemic disaster.
When we examine the geopolitical landscape of this crisis, we find a devastating triangle of famine stretching across the Mediterranean. At the heart lies the epicenter, Negroponte, where conditions are so catastrophic that survivors are forced to consume toxic fish just to stay alive. Despite the immense maritime power of Rhodes and the shipping dominance of Genoa, the essential naval rations, the biscuits, simply cannot get through. These vital supply lines are severed, leaving Euboea in total starving isolation.
To navigate our climate anxiety, we must view it as a climatological nightmare where 16th century poetry meets current data. Ancient prophecies of solar heat on the sea now manifest as unprecedented ocean warming and heat waves.
The grim vision of fishes half-cooked mirrors the reality of mass marine die-offs and acidification. Ultimately, these historical verses align with the systemic breakdown of our global food chain, proving that our deepest environmental fears have been centuries in the making.
Let's shift our focus to the astronomical lens, considering the devastating impact of sudden kinetic energy. Imagine a massive solar flare or a comet striking the Aegean Sea, unleashing energy equivalent to thousands of nuclear weapons. This catalyst triggers a lethal fallout, a thick, false dust that chokes the atmosphere and blots out the sun, leading to immediate crop failure and famine. Intriguingly, Nostradamus captures this chaos, foretelling of a great star burning for 7 days and fire raining from the sky.
The interpretive prism organizes C2Q3 into two competing doomsday narratives. The climatological view envisions a slow-burn, man-made apocalypse of rising temperatures and supply chain failure. Conversely, the astronomical view warns of a sudden, cataclysmic cosmic impact. These verses are so perfectly calibrated, they bend to the interpreter's bias, supporting either a gradual global shift or a sudden disaster. Ultimately, the text reflects the perspective of whoever is reading it, accommodating both visions with equal ease.
We often fall for the illusion of accuracy through retroactive clairvoyance. Consider Nostradamus. In 1555, he published ambiguous texts that were essentially meaningless in isolation. Yet, when a modern crisis strikes, our brains desperately seek order within the chaos. We bridge that gap, assigning meaning back to the text only after the event occurs. This feedback loop bypasses scientific falsifiability, proving that the miracle isn't the prophecy itself, but our own relentless human drive for pattern recognition.
To understand why these prophecies feel so eerily accurate, we have to look at the linguistic engine driving them. Think of it like a cosmic slot machine. By combining vague nouns like fire or famine with flexible geography and timeless themes, Nostradamus engineered an endlessly reusable text. It's pure linguistic trickery. Because these components are so non-specific, interpreters can simply spin the wheels and rearrange the parts until they fit almost any era, person, or catastrophe.
Michel de Nostradamus' enduring legacy isn't a triumph of clairvoyance, but a masterclass in literary strategy. He essentially pioneered falsifiability evasion, using calculated ambiguity as a brilliant survival mechanism. By refusing to be specific, he ensured his prophecies could never be debunked. This vagueness wasn't a flaw, it was a feature. It transformed his work into a timeless canvas, allowing every generation to project their own deepest fears onto his cryptic verses, ensuring his legend remains immortal and eternally relevant.
We naturally search for patterns in chaos, hoping for a roadmap to navigate the unknown. When we examine the anatomy of certainty, we see that figures like Nostradamus endure not because of their accuracy, but because of a fundamental human need. We have a deep-seated desire to believe the world isn't just random chance. We want to feel that somewhere, someone is holding a script, providing the comfort of an underlying order in an otherwise unpredictable universe.